Hello, I'm Adam Collett from Bridgewater and Taunton College, and I'm here today to have a look at some tree ident and to look at some woodland management topics. We're here in the Spinney at Cannington Centre. We've got a number of trees behind us, as we can see, and we're going to look at some of those features and the things that we're looking for on trees when we want to identify what particular species they are. This is quite important because woodland management depends on knowing what species you have, the various growth rates of those species, the various types of shade that they offer, whether they are evergreen or whether they are deciduous, which means losing their leaves in the winter. And when we understand what different species have in terms of their attributes, we can then understand how to manage our woodland better. So, first of all, we're looking at things like leaf shape. Leaf shape can be a very good indicator of what particular species we're dealing with, and it can be useful when deciding on a subspecies particularly to know what the leaf shape is. So we're looking at whether the leaf has little lobes around the edges like these do. We're looking at the surface of the leaf to see what colour it is, whether it's shiny, whether it's dull. We might look at the veins in the leaf to see how many veins we've got and the layout of those veins. We may also look at the undersides of the leaves to see what the underside is like, whether it's hairy, whether it's smooth. And all of these things can help to accurately identify which particular species we're talking about. Now in this case, what we have here is a hawthorn. This is Crataegus monogyna. The reason it's Crataegus monogyna, is the scientific name, is the fruit actually has one seed inside. Monogyna meaning one seed. So we can actually, if we were unsure, we could split the fruit open and have a look and see how many seeds there were inside the fruit to tell us which particular species of hawthorn it was. Now this is a common hawthorn. There are a number of different species such as smooth hawthorn. This is a native tree, a UK native tree. This tree, as you may be able to see, has various spines on the stems. It can be quite a difficult tree to manage from that regard, in that you need to wear thick gloves when carrying out management on it. It's generally quite a low growing tree and is usually found in what we call the understory, so underneath other trees. It's fairly shade tolerant, so it likes shady areas, and can grow, as this one, can grow up sort of about 10-15 feet. But very often you'll see it in hedgerows quite a lot shorter than that, almost as what we might call a shrub rather than a tree. So moving on, another common woodland tree is this one here. Now the leaves here we can see are quite large and round. They're quite furry to the touch. They have what we call a serrated edge, so there's sort of sharp teeth around the edge of the tree, the leaf. And this particular tree is very, very common in what we call mixed deciduous woodland. So it's very commonly an understory tree. It grows very, very quickly, and this is hazel, or Corylus avellana to give it a scientific name. Hazel is very often used for what we call coppicing, which is a woodland management technique. And that is where you cut the tree right down to almost ground level, and then over the next few years the tree will regenerate and the stems will regrow. And hazel has been traditionally used for this purpose for many, many years. And hazel can be used for things like thatching spars, bean poles, pea sticks, tool handles, various sorts of things. A lot of woodland crafts use hazel because it's a very nice wood to work with. It carves very well. You can make things like spoons and tent pegs, all sorts of things like that from it. And the great thing about hazel is the speed at which it grows. Hazel grows very, very quickly, and within about 6 to 7 years you can get regrowth from hazel that will allow you to take another crop and coppice it back down to the ground, and then 6 to 7 years later you can come back and you'll have poles of a similar thickness. As we can see further at the back here, we've got some thin poles here that are probably about 2 to 3 years worth of growth. Right at the back there is a thicker bar, and that would be the sort of pole that we would be looking to coppice out. Once they get to about 25 to 30 millimeters round, that's when we're looking to coppice those hazel branches out and trim the side leaves off and use them for various techniques such as thatching and bean poles and pea sticks and things. So hazel is a very, very useful tree. Also, the other important thing to mention about hazel is the fact that it is a habitat tree for one of our favourite little creatures in the woodland, which is the hazel dormouse. The hazel dormouse love hazel, and very often you will see little boxes hanging off the stems of hazel if you visit a woodland. Those are actually dormouse boxes, and in areas where they know they have dormice, they will put those up because the hazel tree is the favourite tree of the hazel dormouse, hence its name. Moving slightly further on, just above in the higher canopy here, we have another type of tree. Now this particular tree, from the leaves, we can look at the leaves and see that they have lobes to them. The lobes of the leaves are the sort of finger-shaped bits coming off the ends of the leaf. When we have a heavily lobed leaf like that, we can be fairly sure that that is an oak. In this case, this is a common oak, Quercus robur, is the scientific name. And the way we can tell that is when we look at the leaves actually have no stem between the leaf and the branch. The leaf comes directly off the branch, and that means that it is a common oak. If those leaves had a short, sort of 10 to 15 millimeter stem to them, then it would be sessile oak, Quercus petraea. But this one is Quercus robur, a common oak. Very, very distinctive tree, very slow growing tree. Takes many, many years to grow. Oaks can grow to anything up to about 2,500 years old. Some have been recorded older than that, but yes, it takes a very long time for this tree to mature and to produce timber. One of the reasons why oaks aren't grown so much these days is because of that reason, that they take so long to mature and produce useful timber. The tree we're looking at here is probably only about 15 years old, maybe, perhaps a little older. But to get to a useful size, oaks probably need somewhere in the region of about 75 to 100 years. Then they will be able to produce useful timber. So oaks are very much a generational tree, where a grandfather will plant oaks and his grandson will then be the one that actually harvests that timber and uses it. Again, oaks are home to a vast array of lichens, mosses, various ferns will grow on an oak tree, and the oak trees are a habitat in their own right. They are an absolutely amazing species. And they very often make up the majority of trees in some of the older ancient woodlands. They're very, very common there, particularly with hazel as an understory. And hazel very often grows beneath oak trees. Moving back this way, we have a very easily recognisable tree from its bark. This particular tree has a silvery white bark and very small leaves up above, which we can't actually see very well. But the silvery bark is what gives this away, and this particular tree is silver birch. And silver birch is, again, quite a common tree. It's a very useful, what we call pioneer species, and a pioneer species is a type of tree that will set up early in an area that was previously cleared or used to be scrub. These pioneer trees are the first ones to appear in a woodland and grow. And one of the key things about silver birch that make it very useful in a woodland is its ability to draw nitrogen up from the soil. And that means that it is able, through its root system, to gather nitrogen as a nutrient from the soil and pass it up through the tree into its leaves. And this means that any woodland that has a significant amount of silver birch, when those leaves fall in winter, that nitrogen ends up in the topsoil, which provides useful nutrients for other ground flora and plants around. As we can see around this particular tree, we've got quite a lot of nettles, and nettles like a particularly nitrogen-rich environment. And that's why we've got a lot of nettles under here, is because these leaves have been falling year on year, every winter, and then that has created a nitrogen-rich soil in the ground around this silver birch and the other silver birches nearby. And that creates a perfect environment for things like nettles and other ground flora to grow. So silver birch can be a very useful tree to plant in a woodland to ensure that you're getting a good nutrient cycle happening and enriching your soil with nitrogen.